Thank you for joining the HKEX ESG Academy, Decarbonization Along the Value Chain. The event is about to begin. A few housekeeping reminders. The event will be conducted in English with simultaneous interpretation in Putonghua. You can select your preferred language at the top right-hand corner of your screen. You will also see the agenda and Q&A tabs on the right side of your screen. The agenda tab has more information on today's program and our speaker profiles. The Q&A tab allows you to submit written questions during panel discussions. Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the HKEX ESG Academy, Decarbonization Along the Value Chain. This is Hillary from HKEX, and I will be your MC today. The drive to curb carbon emission has been gathering pace, with net zero targets and plans becoming a business priority. But the reality is that individuals or a few companies' actions alone cannot reverse climate change. This requires a complete transformation, with all the different parts of an ecosystem joining forces to reduce carbon emissions. As COP27 comes to a close in Egypt, we would like to take this chance to bring the Hong Kong community together to explore decarbonization and how we can manage carbon emissions along the corporate value chains. So to kick off today's event, we have Ms. Catherine Ng, Head of Policy and Secretariat Services of Listing of HKEX, to deliver the welcome remarks to us. Catherine, please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being with us today at the 4th Hong Kong ESG Academy Seminar. I'm very pleased to welcome our honorable guests to today's event. Ms. Christine Low, Chief Development Strategist at the Institute for the Environment at the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. Christine, thank you for joining us. Mr. 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹liche, Director of Operations at the BEC, and Mr. Alex Hall, Assistant Director of Industry Development at the Construction Industry Council. Climate change is probably the most pressing task of our time. Mounting scientific evidence shows that growing physical risks from climate change are caused by human action. The outlook is alarming, but there's still time for effective action. Last week, policymakers and business leaders around the world gathered at the COP27 to discuss climate change. They explored how we can accelerate global climate change action through reducing emissions, scaling up our adaptation efforts, and increasing the capital flows allocated to decarbonization. Closer to home, President Xi has announced China's 2060 carbon neutrality target, while the Hong Kong government has set a carbon neutrality target for 2050. Furthermore, the Hong Kong government launched its Climate Action Plan last year, outlining our new initiatives to transition Hong Kong to a low-carbon, climate-resilient economy. Globally, nations representing 70% of worldwide emissions have announced net zero targets. These include China, Japan, and the EU, among others. And their message has been clear. The task of combating climate change is urgent, and the work needs to start now. But governments cannot achieve their net zero goals on their own. These goals will only be achieved with the business and finance sectors and individual citizens all playing their part in driving this low-carbon transition. It's really encouraging to see that some companies have already started to set carbon reduction targets and plans. But since our supply chain emissions often account for a sizable portion of a company's total footprint, engaging the value chain is vital to meeting decarbonization goals. This means that companies need to evaluate their value chains and capture the impacts of climate change on each business activity and formulate the actions required. All of that requires communicating with and collecting data from stakeholders along the organization's value chain. This is a journey that every company needs to go through, and HKEX has a key role to play in this. Sitting at the heart of Asia's capital markets with a unique role as a super connector between East and West, HKEX is well positioned to drive the sustainability agenda across our markets and facilitate the growth of sustainable finance and the transition to net zero. As an international exchange operator, market regulator, and a public company ourselves, we see ourselves as a change agent and seek to lead by example, promoting sustainability across our business, operations, and markets. As part of our commitment to facilitate the transition to net zero, we joined the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero in 2021, and more recently, you would have seen the launch of our Core Climate, a new international carbon marketplace that will support the trading of carbon credits and other instruments to help deliver the global transition to net zero. This follows the establishment of the Hong Kong International Carbon Market Council in July, as well as the ongoing success of our Sustainable and Green Exchange stage, an online portal providing information on and access to sustainable and green products across Asia. So as you can see, we're doing quite a bit in this space, and we're committed to continuing our efforts as we move the needle on climate change. In today's ESG Academy seminar, we're delighted to be joined by a number of leading experts to deepen our market's understanding of decarbonization practices. In particular, we're excited to go into detail about how we can reduce and manage carbon emissions along the value chain. Christine will share with us more on why we need to engage our suppliers and customers and the opportunities that follow with it. But before we get into that, I'd like to talk a little bit about the work we've done at the Exchange on ESG. As a frontline regulator of more than 2,500 companies, HKEX plays a vital role in promoting a culture of good corporate governance and ESG management through our listing regulation, rules, advocacy, and education. We first introduced ESG disclosure requirements in 2013, and since then, we've continued to upgrade listed issuers' disclosure obligations. Starting from 2016, we required all listed issuers, that's every single one of the 2,500 listed issuers, to publish ESG reports on an annual basis. In addition, effective from July 2020, our ESG guide has been revised to incorporate key elements of TCFD recommendations. We require issuers to have a governance structure for overseeing ESG matters, consider significant climate change risks, set environmental targets, and implement measures to address climate risks. As a member of the Hong Kong Green and Sustainable Finance Cross-Agency Steering Group, we also support the development of globally accepted sustainability reporting standards by the International Sustainability Standards Boards, ISSB for short. The ISSB is in the process of finalizing its standards. We're closely monitoring developments and are considering proposals to further enhance our climate disclosure requirements in line with the new ISSB standards. Decarbonization can be achieved through a range of initiatives, for example, through managing how we use packaging materials. Later on, CF will share with us how we can reduce carbon footprints through sustainable packaging management. In Hong Kong, companies in the properties and construction industry represent about 20% of our Hong Kong listed company population. As you'll be aware, buildings are a big contributor to global carbon emissions. And Alex will share with us what we can do to reduce carbon emissions during a building life cycle. Now, on to market engagement. Over the years, we've provided ongoing guidance and training to our listed issuers to promote ESG stewardship. For example, we publish regular guidance for directors and members of the board to help them drive ESG strategy across their companies. For report preparers, our step-by-step guide also sets out a structured way to plan and prepare ESG reports. Specifically on climate change and decarbonization, we publish a guide on climate disclosure and organize training sessions to provide practical tips for preparing TCFD-aligned climate change reporting. Through the ESG Academy, we support market education on ESG factors, just like in today's events, whereby industry experts can gather together to share insights and strategies. Practical examples are important though. We're determined to share real, actionable insights that come from practical experiences. Therefore, we're delighted to also welcome today Peter Lee, General Manager, Sustainability of the Hong Kong Airport Authority, 𝗙𝗹𝗹𝗻𝗋, Chief Sustainability Officer and QA Director of A.S. Watson Group, and Mr. Raymond Yao, General Manager, Technical Services and Sustainable Development of 𝗙𝗴𝗲 Properties. They will share with us their insights and experience on what companies can do to manage carbon emissions along their value chains. Last but not least, all of our guidance and training materials, including today's seminars, are available online by just searching ESG Academy, our one-stop information platform. I encourage you all to visit and access the latest news and guidance in relation to ESG matters there. Tackling climate change requires unparalleled levels of cooperation across every industry and commitment from all parties along the value chain. All of us have a critical part to play, and we have to act fast. I hope that this afternoon's discussion will provide you with some valuable insights on reducing carbon footprint along your value chain. Without further ado, I will now pass the floor to our speakers. Thank you and have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Catherine. Now, it gives us great pleasure to welcome Ms. Christine Lo, Chief Development Strategist of Institute for the Environment of the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, to the stage. Christine will now deliver her presentation on knowing your value chain, a need and an opportunity. Christine, over to you, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Hong Kong Stock Exchange, for including me in this. So let me start without further ado. COP27, I think you all read the news and you know it is ongoing. I believe we're now coming to the end, and tomorrow, I believe, is the last day. Now, what you read in the newspaper is, of course, what reporters believe to be newsworthy. But let us not forget that these COP meetings are multilateral meetings. They are annual meetings of governments from all around the world. And I think every government around the world is now a member because they've signed up to discussing climate politics, climate policies on an ongoing basis. So we're in Egypt this year. Last year was very well known. Many people talked about in Scotland last year what happened. And next year, let us not forget, there will be COP28. So the point that I'm trying to make here is, many people ask me, it's very sexy right now to talk about ESG and climate change, but is this going to be an ongoing matter of global importance? And my answer to them is yes, absolutely, because this is a multilateral issue of great concern. Now, China is actually a very major, influential player today. If you don't know the gentleman on your left, that is our climate envoy, Mr. 𝗙𝗵𝗲, and I think is widely acknowledged that China's appearance and Mr. Xi's appearance is one of the most important person going to these COP meetings. Now, the photo on the right is also very recent. This is President Xi Jinping meeting with President Joe Biden in Bali. And you will also have read that one of the things that they agreed to do in trying to perhaps mend relations between China and the US is that climate discussions can continue. The reason I want to press this point today is just to illustrate the point that at the multilateral level, at the national level, the great importance of climate change. Because this importance actually pervades national policies. Because after governments come home from COP, they actually need to review what they do. And indeed, actually before every COP, there are actually ongoing discussions and negotiations amongst the governments of the world. Now, this is a little slide provided by universities in China and created by Bloomberg. Now, just think of that picture. China is expected to decarbonize approximately on that path. That is the commitment that China has made. Just imagine, other countries too are making similar commitments. They too will have their decarbonization timetable. The reason I want you to look at this is to ask yourself, the different businesses that you're in, with countries, including China, going on that kind of pathway, how do you think that might change the industry that you're in? Now, you will have many different answers from the different industry, but the point, again, that I'm trying to make is these kinds of commitment from different governments, it is having a great impact, and it will continue to have a great impact on all industries. Many people also talk about taxonomies, and many people are confused about what it is and what it means for them. What I just want to illustrate here, again, is on the right, you see the document from China. Actually, China was one of the first government to come up with thinking about what reforms they need to make in order to actually change their financial system so that they can attract money, capital from all around the world to do all the things that they need to. Now, you saw this, and just imagine, as I said, not just China, but many other countries. They all have to kind of think about where the money is going to come from for them to make that deep dive in decarbonization. So when we talk about green finance strategy at the policy and government level, when we talk about taxonomy, when we talk about ESG, this is actually a way to think about for policymakers and for financial regulators. How can we devise a system to help private sector money to be directed towards greener projects? And as I said, China alone, we're talking about many, many trillions of dollars over the years. Well, then we have lots of alphabet soups, right? People talk about TCFD, and then now there is TNFD, and people sort of say, well, what this is all about. Well, the details we all need to learn. We're going on together a huge learning journey. And the point I want to make here is that steep dive of decarbonization, we're heading for a world that we haven't been to before. We're having to do things together that we actually don't quite know how to do. This isn't something that is all well studied, everybody knows what to do. There's a lot of exploratory work that needs to be done. And if you're going to remember anything else that I say today, perhaps just two things. One is about, as I said, directing the money to industry for transformation. And the other is actually reviving and protecting our natural environment. And so you are going to hear more and more together when we talk about decarbonization, climate change. We're also going to be talking about how to revive and restore nature. And as we're doing it, we want to have new systems where we recognize the power of what nature does to our lives, to our natural system. We know we need to preserve them, but how do we make sure that that will make financial sense? We want to make the financial sense become more obvious so that people understand why we must restore, protect, and strengthen our biodiversity. So these two things will go together in policy at the national level, at the local level, even in Hong Kong, and at a global level. Well, you know, everybody is kind of holding their heads and say, well, this is really troublesome. Scope 1, Scope 2, maybe I can manage that. But wow, they're coming and asking me about Scope 3. I think what I want to share with you today is we've already been through a kind of digital revolution where we know data is really valuable. So today, we're actually having to collect, again, for many years to come, a whole new range of data that we haven't had to collect before. But because we want to be scientifically, as robust as possible, to think about decarbonization, to think about sustainability, restoring nature, and then to try and think about what is the financial aspect to all of that work. We are having to collect this whole new range of data, make sense of it, have policies both at the government level and as well as the industry and corporate level that kind of makes sense. So I think at this stage, all I want to say is, no matter how troublesome it is, we are going to have to do it, right? Because it's coming at the global level, it's coming at the national government level. We will have, or every company will have, a new treasure trove of data in the next few years. This will give us all new insight into how we're operating our business. And as national laws and regulations change to strengthen what we all need to do to protect the environment, that source of data will become something valuable to industry and to companies as to what else you can do. And the more global investors are going to be interested in investing in companies that are more environmentally advanced, then the data that you have will enable you to perhaps have an edge in what you can do to attract investors. Catherine already talked a little bit about the alphabet soup and ISSB and so on. Here, I just want to say that our headache about what system to adopt and so on, what are they going to do internationally, hopefully, actually everybody is having the same headache. So people very sensibly at least are saying to each other, let's have some unity. Let's set some global standard. And I'm glad to say, as Catherine reminded us, actually our Hong Kong regulators are a part of that. They're at the forefront of working with people at the international level that are dealing with this. So that's why I think the Hong Kong regulators have made it quite clear that they're going to be following this international process. So they will need us in the corporate world to do what we are supposed to do. So there is going to be a pathway for all of us to follow. It is very mafan, that's true, for the next few years. But again, my message today is you will kind of go through the mafan once, and once you kind of get the hang of it, it will become easier. And if you don't think you're doing very well, don't worry. Everybody else is thinking they're not doing well. So these classes that Hong Kong EX is doing and many other organizations and institutions in Hong Kong are doing the same to help us all to advance. And then, of course, one great thing about Hong Kong people is actually Hong Kong people are quite willing to go and learn. Because I hear from so many institutions that the classes and attendance and so on from Hong Kong people is actually tremendous. So that's good. We know what we don't know, and we're all going to learn. So just a quick reminder about what we need to do, and even SMEs. The thing about these new regulations is we need to disclose information in a more organized way: governance, strategy, risk management, metrics, and targets. And very often for maybe smaller companies, you are going to have to do it because you're dealing with your banks who are going to ask you, because Hong Kong has new regulations. You are going to be asked by your listed companies, if you're doing business with them, they're going to ask you for more data. So that's another reason why you have to do it. And if you follow this kind of framework, it actually will also help smaller companies to deal with this. And then lastly, I just want to make a quick summary. Sustainability is here to stay, and we're actually going on a revolution together. This is a revolution. Nothing else. This is a revolution. The drivers are coming from science, politics, and government. Governments are adopting global standards that Hong Kong will be following. People you're doing business with, banks, and so on are all on board, and we're all affected. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christine. We appreciate you taking the time to share your valuable insights. In the next session, we are pleased to invite Mr. 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹, Director of Operations of Business Environment Council, to the stage. Mr. Leung will talk about how we can progress the low-carbon journey through sustainable packaging. Mr. Leung, over to you, please.
Okay, thank you for the introduction. My name is CF Leung. I'm the Operation Director of Business Environment Council. It's always a tough job to speak behind Christine because she's always an excellent speaker, right? So my presentation topic is talking about the packaging, realization of a low-carbon city, sustainable packaging management in action. So I hope you will think about what we can do in reducing the packaging after my presentation. So the importance of packaging is multifaceted, from containing and protecting the materials or products from the manufacturing point, along with the supply chain to the retail store or to the customer, and attracting people to purchase the product or even to disclose the product information in the packaging. So packaging is indispensable to the business operation and our daily life. But you can see from the pictures, right? Sometimes we will think about that the packaging is really necessary, or sometimes we think that the packaging is too excessive. So back to the big picture, right? I think all of you are familiar with that. The Hong Kong's government has a determination to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. And in 2019, you see the footprint in the slide, that the electricity generation is the biggest carbon emitter, which accounts for around 2/3 of the carbon emission in Hong Kong, followed by transportation by around 80%. And in fact, waste account for about 7% of the total emission in Hong Kong. It's been the third largest single source of carbon emission. And you see that 7% of the carbon emission is from the landfill site. Another policy drive is that the Hong Kong government also published the waste blueprint for Hong Kong 2035. So this is the second blueprint. The first one was published back to 2013. And in the latest waste blueprint, there are 3 visions: waste reduction, resources circulation, and zero landfill. So in order to achieve the 3 visions, 6 major areas of actions are identified, including waste reduction, waste separation, resources circulation, industry support, innovation and cooperation, and education and publicity. And I would like to highlight publicity and public education are essential for promoting the green style, to instill the green style mindset into people and to drive the behavioral change. Also, green business practices are effective and efficient in reducing the generation of the packaging waste. So the stakeholders in the industry should join hands together to explore and implement practical measures to promote the simple packaging, waste reduction and source, and recycling. So in order to support the listed company and the local businesses in reducing the packaging waste to achieve both the environmental benefit as well as to reducing the operation costs, the EPD has commissioned Business Environment Council to develop a set of sector-specific guidelines on the packaging reduction as well as management. So the project was started in last June, and we covered different sectors. So right now, the one guide has already been published, that is supermarkets and grocery store sectors. And the objective of this guideline is to provide industry-specific practical tips as well as experience sharing from local and from international to achieve sustainable packaging management. The second one is to offer guidance and reference with tailor-made templates to prepare the packaging reporting and disclosure of the packaging data in a harmonized structure. And of course, the ultimate objective is to help Hong Kong to achieve the carbon neutrality by 2050. So the second and the third guide focusing on the logistics sector and e-commerce will be published very soon. So I hope you will have a chance to have a look, to download the guides from the EPD website, as well as provide your feedback to us to make the guide even better. And several sectors are also under development, including the hotel and hospitality, and electronics and electrical appliances. So in terms of the development of the guides, there are 4 main stages. The first stage is to desktop and the market research. My team members focus on the research to search the international best practice and to benchmark with other standards to see whether what we can be done in Hong Kong. The second stage is the stakeholder interview. So we treasure the input and the voice, opinions, and experience from the industry practitioners, right? We organize various stakeholder engagement workshops to collect the views and the feedback from the industry. So the development process was carried out this year and last year, so we're still under the fifth wave of the COVID. So we hold the workshops in hybrid mode. So during the workshop, we appreciate the input from different industry practitioners. We also use some of the innovative software like the online polling to gauge the view from the stakeholder. After collecting the views, and we try to packaging and draft the guide. And of course, after the approval from the EPD, the guide was being officially launched. So, talking about the overview of the guide, we take the supermarkets and grocery store sector as an example. There are 4 main parts of the guide. The first part is talking about introduction. The introduction sections covers the industry trend, policy direction, and the basics of the packaging. It helps the reader to understand the importance of the packaging reduction for meeting the customer expectation and to align the policy direction of the Hong Kong SAR government and the global policy and the regulation trends. It also explains the basic idea of the packaging and its classification, like the primary packaging, secondary, tertiary, and the final packaging, the application and associated environmental risk. The core part includes comprising the experience sharing as well as the step of the packaging reporting. This part illustrates the practical tips for achieving the sustainable packaging following the waste management hierarchy: avoid or prevent, reduce, etc. Case study and examples are shown how local and international companies have been putting ideas into practices. Besides, step-by-step guidance are also provided to show the business how to prepare packaging reporting in a harmonized structure. For the resources section, it covers the FAQ as well as the useful resources for the readers who wish to pursue or acquire more further information. Also, a self-evaluation tool is also prepared to let the businesses to self-evaluate what has been done, what can be done, and the sources required to reduce the packaging. So in the following slide, I will take some examples for your reference. So this is the supermarket and the grocery store sector. So we tried to do some of the observation. So in the supermarket, we also observed that multiple layers of non-essential packagings are being adopted, like buying some of the fruits or even vegetable, and they are packed together. In terms of suggestions, we propose to sell the food in the loose form. The supermarket and grocery store can consider to setting up of the packaging free corner and ceasing the free distribution of the flat top plastic bag. And I saw that some supermarket already done this. They are not using plastic bag, they are using paper bags, which can be more easily recyclable. So we also provide a list of the criteria on the products that can be suitable to be sold in the packaging-free format. And finally, we also provide some of the referencing photo of the best practice so that the relative sector practitioner can learn how to do it. We also include some of the local and overseas experience. So, So this is some of the good example extract can be observed in Hong Kong. And for the overseas experience, we benchmark with United Kingdom, Japan, New Zealand, Singapore, and the Netherlands. So in terms of the packaging reporting, so as mentioned by Catherine, and under the requirement of Hong Kong EX, and Hong Kong listed companies are required to report on the ESG matter on annual basis in their annual report. And under the aspect A2, use of resources, KPI A2.5 of the Appendix 27, ESG reporting guide published by Hong Kong EX, companies are required to disclose information on total packaging material used for the finished products. So, in the guideline, we have prepared some of the questions to guide the businesses how to report their packaging. For example, how to define the reporting boundary, how to identify the source of the packaging consumption, what are the commonly found packaging materials and their forms, and how to collect data, do the best estimation or the calculation. I understand this is a 麻煩 procedure in collecting the data, right? But we can learn from the experience how we can do it more smarter. And last one is how to properly report and disclose the packaging consumption data. So some of the templates are illustrated in the guide. Of course, this is just for reference only. Businesses can develop their own template or use their own method to measure or estimate the packaging to be disclosed in their annual report. And I try to share some of the real case examples. So this is a local lifestyle grocery store offering zero waste and the refillable items. So talking about we can purchase some of the hand soap or the tea tree oil or even cleaner. You can just bring your own bottle and there is no need for further packaging on these products. Another example is talking about recycling and recovery. This is a supermarket chain setting up a RVM, reverse vending machine, at the supermarket, right? I'm not sure how many of you have already tried this RVM. Understand that the government has already set up more than 100 RVM in the city. So every time you dump the beverage bottle inside the RVM machine, then you can get the 10 cents rebate. But the important message to you is that please clean the beverage bottle before dumping into the RVM. Otherwise, the RVM will be very dirty, right, and induce some of the hygiene problem. And the last one is talking about the packaging reporting. There's a supermarket chain reporting the group's consumption data of the plastic packaging and the progress of reduction target into an internationally organization. So, unlocking the opportunity for listed company for the sustainable packaging management. Of course, I strongly encourage the businesses to make reference to the guideline because the guidelines is resourceful, influential, and collaborative. And inducing the changes at corporate level is very important because they can demonstrate their CSR commitment and help to capture the new business opportunity and bring effective influence on their clients as well as their supply chain. So this is the conclusion of my presentation. So the guide already published for the supermarket and the grocery sector. So I hope you will enjoy and download the guideline and provide some of the useful feedback to us. And self-evaluation form is also provided. The practitioner can refer to the guide to perform a step-by-step self-evaluation to say what you can be done better. The second is to explore the gaps in packaging and management along the supply chain and throughout the business cycle. It's also important for the businesses to provide sufficient training to its staff to review its purchasing policy as well as to influence their suppliers in reducing the packaging. The third one is to formulate a holistic packaging reduction plan and considering the improvement options. For the packaging reporting, it's very important. It's already a Hong Kong EX requirement. So we try to disclose the packaging consumption data in a more systematic and standardized manner to reduce the hardship of the collect the data and provide the key step-by-step guidance to do the proper disclosure. And finally, engagement is also very important because we need to collaborate with each other so that internally the company can work with the ESG and sustainability team, legal team, procurement team, etc., to do better, to think carefully what can be done in order to reduce the packaging. So that's the end of my presentation. I hope you will join hands together to reduce the packaging waste and to achieve the carbon neutrality by 2050. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leung, for sharing some great tips on packaging waste reduction for a low-carbon city. Now, we would like to invite Mr. Alex Ho, Assistant Director of Industry Development of the Construction Industry Council, to the stage. Alex will now deliver his presentation on reducing carbon emissions across the building life cycle. Alex, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Hong Kong EX, for inviting us to have an opportunity to share with you about the CIC's approach in reducing the carbon emission across the whole building life cycle. So to give you some background about the Construction Industry Council, CIC, we are formed in 2007, and our council members are representatives from various sectors in the industry, including the employer, professionals, academia, workers, and also the government official. And our vision is to drive unity and excellence of the construction industry of Hong Kong. And our mission is to strengthen the sustainability of the construction industry in Hong Kong by providing a communication platform. When we examine the whole building life cycle, it goes through 4 phases, namely the building materials, the production phases, construction phases, use phases, as well as the end-of-life phases. And in our industry, there are many key stakeholders along the supply chain, including the project owners, developers, design consultants, contractors, subcontractors, suppliers, manufacturers. You see that there are a lot of stakeholders. So let me use a video to show CIC's goals on sustainable construction. Let me highlight some of the CIC's sustainable initiative for the construction industry. So when we talk about sustainable initiative, it's mainly we cover 2 major phases of building life cycle. So during the design phases, we put a lot of focus on building methodologies and material design, like MIC, BIM. And during the construction phases, we leverage various technologies to minimize site impact. And I will elaborate more on this initiative. While for the building and use phases, on the energy performance side, the Hong Kong Green Building Council, the Hong Kong Electric, and China Light and Power have been doing a lot of work in this area. So to cater the upcoming construction workload in Hong Kong, we are expecting around 300 billion per year. The Chief Executive in his policy address requests to enhance the speed, effectiveness, volume, and quality of public housing development by adopting the modular integrated construction approach. This arrangement could accelerate the construction effectiveness and also the housing supply at a much earlier time. And currently, there are more than 70 projects already adopted MIC in Hong Kong. Another area of technology is to optimize design and construction process through the adoption of building information modeling, BIM, and other digital solutions. It allows designers like architects and engineers to design and collaborate virtually, ensuring the design is buildable, well coordinated, safe, and energy efficient before it is built. I would like to use 𝗙𝗏𝗟 at the Hong Kong Science Park as an example on how MIC and BIM accelerate their work and achievement sustainable construction. Let's look at the video. So as you can see that with the technology that we are pushing to MIC and BIM, there are several benefit gains in this project. It advanced the completion by 5 months in 18 months contract, reduced construction weight by 20%, reduced non-inert waste by 80%, and 50% reduction of total construction vehicle count, 0 work injury and 0 accident, and better air quality. The CIC Green Product Certification is a comprehensive approach in evaluating multiple aspects of the product, such as the carbon footprint, the greenhouse gas emission, human toxicity, resources consumption, ecosystem impact. It currently comprises of 28 material types of products, including low carbon materials such as cement, ready-mixed concrete, and reinforcement bar and structural steel. And we encourage developers and designers to use products with CIC Green Product Certificate to reduce carbon footprint. And to calculate the embodied carbon during the design and construction phases of the project, when we talk about measurement here, CIC has launched Carbon Assessment Tool, CAT. It is the first online free carbon assessment tools. And besides, if you use these tools, the project can gain 2 credits under the BIM Plus new buildings. And last year, we have launched the Sustainable Finance Certification Scheme. It serves as a tool to facilitate the construction industry and banks on certifying sustainable aspects for green finance and provide a common framework and assessment system for the construction supply chain to implement sustainable practice. So it covers all stakeholders here, like project owners, developers, contractors, subcontractors, supplier, and manufacturer. And then in our scheme, we cover 4 financial products, namely the green loans, other green facilities, sustainability linked loan, other sustainability linked facility. And CIC is a recognized external review body of the Hong Kong MA Green and Sustainable Finance Grant Scheme. And we are delighted to have a strong support from the construction and financial stakeholders with over 80 supporting organizations and 23 projects as of November 2022. In fact, we have started to promote sustainable construction back in 2018 and launched the first CIC Sustainable Construction Award to recognize the good sustainable practice among organizations. And the second award was then held in 2020, and in fact, next year we are going to have the third Sustainable Award, and the application will be open soon in January 2023. And I would like to take this opportunity to welcome you to join our CIC iHub guided tour and visit the Zero Carbon Park in Kowloon Bay to gain an insight into the world of modern construction practice and innovative technology, so you can know more about us on the website. And lastly, we have a Construction Innovation Expo 2022, we call CI Expo. It will be held from the 12th to 16th, just next month, December, at the Hong Kong Convention and Exhibition Center, and showcasing the innovative construction solution and technology. So providing also an effective platform for business development. So please mark your calendar, and we hope to see you over there. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Now, we have a panel session looking at managing carbon emissions along the value chain, where our panelists will explore the role that corporate boards play in overseeing climate-related issues and how corporates can engage their value chain partners to achieve their decarbonization goals. So first, I would like to introduce our moderator, Ms. Kelly Lee, Vice President of Policy and Secretariat Services of Listing of HKEX. And in this discussion, we are also joined by the following panelists. Mr. Peter Lee, General Manager of Sustainability at Airport Authority Hong Kong. Mr. 𝗙𝗹𝗹𝗻, Chief Sustainability Officer and QA Director at A.S. Watson Group. And finally, Mr. Raymond Yao, General Manager of Technical Services and Sustainable Development of Swire Properties. Throughout the panel discussion, please feel free to share your questions with us through the Q&A tab at the right-hand side of our event platform. So without further ado, Kelly, over to you, please.
Thank you. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today. And I'm very happy we have heard a lot from Christine talking about why decarbonization is important to every one of us. And we also have CF and also Alex sharing with us the tools and guidance that are available in terms of packaging reduction as well as building decarbonization in the building sector. So it's very happy and honored to have all representatives from different companies, from different sectors to join us here to talk about and share with us more about their practical experience along this decarbonization journey. So first, I think Christine's mentioned that the decarbonization journey is not an easy task for all the companies. And in particular, the board plays a very leading role in overseeing the strategic direction towards this journey. And also, it's very important to have the support and collaboration from the senior management to ensure the implementation of the policies. So maybe first to Peter. Peter is responsible for the sustainability strategies in the Airport Authority. So could you share with us how your experience in terms of how you collaborate with the board in supporting the whole decarbonization journey in Airport Authority?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Kelly. I think the Airport Authority boards actually have a larger than average size, and we have board members from cover a large wide range of expertise, including aviation, commercial, financial, and also government, and also the legal sectors. And I think our board have the full accountabilities of all the sustainability strategy of the airport authorities. I think they do have provide full support. As an example, I think just in last year, I think the board approved the Hong Kong International Airport 2050 net zero carbon targets. And also they approved the release of our first TCFD statement. And in fact, we also released the second statement just August this year. And apart from that, actually, in terms of the actual implementation, we do have our management team, which we have what we call the Sustainability Executive Task Force, chaired by our CEO with all the executive directors in the task force, which they oversee all the major sustainability programs. This actually demonstrates our commitments and management and the reporting in terms of the sustainability-related strategies and initiatives. And in fact, I think we also want to ensure that we do have the good preparedness in terms of handling all these issues. That's why actually back in last year, we actually accepted the invitation of Standard & Poor's to carry out what they call the ESG risk assessment. So they have actually completed the assessment, and we are actually the first airport with the Standard & Poor's report released to the public. And in that report, actually, they also appreciate our strong preparedness in terms of handling the future potential disruptors in terms of, for example, climate change, technology and innovations, and also increasing in passenger and cargo throughput, etc. And while still maintaining our primary mandate to keep Hong Kong as the major international and global aviation hubs. So this is also what we consider as a health check for us to ensure that we are really well prepared for all those upcoming potential disruptors.
Thank you. So next, we will over to Raymond. Raymond oversees and leads the sustainability strategies with Swire Property. And we understand that Swire Properties has set a target of reducing Scope 3 emissions arising from capital goods as well as the downstream leased assets. So could you share with us a bit more on what inspires Swire Properties in coming up with such targets and how you get the management buy-in from your board of directors?
Right, indeed, it's a very good question. Sustainable development comes a long way in Swire Properties' sustainability or disclosure journey. Back in 2003, we started to have our first EHS report, and moving on, and we adopted TCFD as well as back in 2015, the exchange listing guidelines to prepare our SC report. But one fundamental changes is at the year of 2016, our then chief executive, at the back of the Paris Agreement, which completed in December 2015, and review among ourselves what the corporate need to do in response to that sort of challenges. So we thus started our new journey, rekindling our new sustainability journey. And since then, we committed to the science-based target. And the actual target was taken a while to put together because it involved a lot of groundwork to begin with. So the first 2-degree aligned science-based target eventually get endorsed back in 2019. Indeed, after 2 years preparation, all the required work and understanding our business. And then shortly later on in 2021, we committed to the 1.5-degree aligned science-based target, still becoming the first listed company in I would say, in Greater China, having our SBT endorsed by SBTi. And with that, not only we need to commit to certain carbon emission that we can control under our remits, and which classify as Scope 1 and 2, earlier Christine mentioned about that, but Scope 3 is also part and parcel of the requirement. And then we begin to look into our operation and find that even in a typical office building that we manage, over 50 or 60% of the carbon emission are actually emitted by our tenant. But another 40% classified as landlord. Effectively, majority of them are to provide air conditioning, serving the tenant. Meaning, if we want to make a realistic sort of reduction in carbon, we cannot ignore our value chain. In this case, it is our tenant, right, for office. So with that, as part of SBT, we need to commit to to looking into what would be the corresponding reduction commitment on the Scope 3. So we started to look into our inventory, looking at the whole corporate sort of Scope 3 emission, and try to find out which are the most materialistic in terms of most influential in our emission. For real estate development, that we maintain our asset for a long period of time, then we find two major categories under the GHG protocol, name it the capital goods and downstream lease asset. The latter being our tenant, whether it's retail or office tenant. But the capital goods essentially our new development. Earlier, Alex, in his presentation, talking about the new development and so on and so forth, that's exactly the point. So once we find out the emission constitute almost 70% of our whole Scope 3 emission, then for that year, in committing to certain targets in SBT, we committed to two sort of numeric targets, which are the capital goods. So essentially, all new development will have to reduce the embodied carbon by certain percentage for a certain time compared to a certain baseline year, and equally on the tenant. So that's basically the journey. So we need to look at how much impact ourselves has. And being a listed company, investors and also own employers and customers and consultant suppliers are all our interested value chain partners we need to engage with. That started our whole journey, completely revamping our whole asset, but ramping on our previous work on this. So from 2016, completely reform our whole operation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So over to Sebastian. So it's very exciting to see that A.S. Watson Group come up with the new emission targets in June earlier this year, and as the Chief Sustainability Officer in the group. So could you share with us how the board and also the senior management work together towards achieving these targets?
Yes. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. So first of all, on the targets, so it's the first time really publicly we announce it. Last week we had an announcement from the Science Based Target Initiative, or SBTi, for our new targets, Scope 1, Scope 2, and for the first time we took 2 targets on Scope 3 as well. Because we realized that although the work we've done so far on Scope 1 and Scope has been good, Scope 3 is massive. So retail, Scope 3 represents over 90% of emissions. So we need to look into it and we need to take commitment as well there. Going back to the board, and for all the companies out there basically who are maybe starting their journey, governance, I think, is the first thing you need to put in place. And governance is about setting, of course, right metrics, right reporting, but setting teams as well. So our board, for example, back in 2010, set up a global sustainability committee to really engage, develop a strategy, understand how to measure progress as well over the years. That committee is made of, I would say, the key business holder. We are retail, so we have colleagues from Europe, from Asia, so we can see both sides of the business, different customers' expectations, etc., that have to be taken into consideration as well. We've got representative of our legal team, our internal audit, also with our group HR director. So the team basically really represents all the core functions that will make that governance work. And it's very important that that is set up at the very beginning. And then the next step is definitely looking at materiality, understanding where is your impact, what can you do about it. So the target that we got endorsed last week, it took us a long time, of course, to be developed. It takes time. We talked about math and data earlier. Yes, data is the painless, not the painless, but the most painful part of any reporting, but it's essential. If you can't measure it, you can't act on it, and you cannot progress.
Thank you. So as our panelists also touched upon the importance of engaging with the stakeholders along the value chain in terms of to ensure the success of the company's decarbonization journey, because very often these stakeholders account for very much portion of your carbon emission. So maybe Raymond first, as we also mentioned that the real estate sectors represent about 20% of our listed companies in our market. So maybe our audience will be interested to know a bit more on Swire Properties. So how you engage with all your different stakeholders and how you identify and measures those hotspots along your value chain?
Right, I think earlier Alex mentioned about the contribution of CIC on the real estate sector. And we rely on a lot of work that the industry leader in this field. But for us, we take a stock about, for example, one of our latest completed One Taikoo Place, 48-story, almost 1 million square foot of GFA. This is quite a typical new kinds of sustainable buildings put in place in Hong Kong, in Central, in Kowloon, wherever. So we actually take a stock about the embodied carbon earlier, the A1 to A5, A4 sort of process, and measure it. And after we measure, we share with the industry what is the embodied carbon. So I always like to share this magic number. So for almost a 40-story, 48-story building, then typically, once we embedded some low-carbon cement or recycled steel, we got this 575 kilogram carbon per construction floor area. This become a norm as far as you're concerned. We know if contractors use a low-carbon spec adopting the CIC green concrete, by and large, they could achieve this target. But for us, we set a target for new building put up to emit or having lesser embodied carbon, lower than this figure. And similarly, with a lot of new building across in Chinese mainland, we did a similar kinds of approach with Tsinghua University, established that sort of benchmark for our counterpart buildings across in Chinese mainland. So we give the carbon calculator to those nominated contractors in bid of our work, urging them to use it, although we cannot compulsorily force them, but through a lot of effort, they try their best to source those sort of low carbon cements and so on and so forth. So that's at least the least work we could do in ensuring that our new buildings put up in all locations be achieved a certain low embodied carbon yardstick, right? So that's how we currently deal with. But we also include in our spec, but there have been some time in the marketplace that opposing our spec because they said, oh, it's 1 or 2 concreters, but now at least about 10 concreters be able to offer this low carbon. So you just have to live with some stretch order that you put in the marketplace, let the market to work it out themselves, right? But considering the fact that there might be premium, but you need to watch out the potential premium attached to it. But if you have the hard stat you want to get as sustainable building you ought to invest some sort of premium for that. So the other major material aspect is our downstream lease asset. So for that, outside our control in a lot of sense, so but if we start to talk about with them with these, they would immediately respond, oh, financial return if they reduce their consumption. Then, as a landlord, you need to rebate them, but this is not the starting point. I would be extremely hard to convince my boss to go along that line right away, right? So the way I put it together is that try to find out some common interest to begin with. So they have their reasonable tall order sustainability requirement. Let's work with international name to begin with, right? Because you need to have a quick success and critical mass to enable you to expand the network. So we choose some international brands and then talk with them. Do they have a tall sustainability agenda? And we shared our with them and what the landlord can help them to achieve their interests. And a lot of international branding come to approach us. They have this and that and so on. Then the starting point, we have some free service to offer you. A simple piece of work, energy audit, free of charge. We go to work out some basic yardstick that they aspire longing to have those sort of data. Then we give them some tips how to reduce their consumption. And now we even roll out a non-financially sort of incentive, which is what we call the Green Performance Pledge, to help them to look at carbon, water, and waste. We provide them a lot of good input and some yardstick to rate their performance or operation to be good, medium, and a lot of room to improvement. And when we roll out 1 year trial, and all came back with very, very good feedback. And they always try to continue to register. Now we are having to stop the registration. Now over 28% of our tenants in our entire Hong Kong office tenants are registering for next year's of Green Performance Pledge. And then this is how we engage them, because they obviously very good result from it. And surprisingly, none of those participating tenants would not want the name to be known among themselves during this leaderboard competition. Initially, we offered them remain anonymous, but none of them want that. They all want themselves, the name to be known in terms of the performance, because they want to compete among themselves. And then, and this is quite a surprise observation. So now we will be offering to as much as 28%. We have to stop for a while because we are short of resources internally to handle all these numbers in working on this particular pledge. So, and also during the particular 2019, there's a reduced, and even now, reduced number of visitors to Hong Kong. A lot of our retail mall immediately reduce visitors, and then there's a tremendous trade mix, increasing number of food and beverage for local families, right? Then the power consumption shot up, right? Oh, come on! I got committed to SPT absolute target. All of a sudden, then the consumption go up. So that we work out a way to what we call is unprecedented. It's called Green Kitchen Initiative. So we have this in place for 3 and 4 years now. We have a lot of new F&B tenants into our Chinese mainland retail mall in Hong Kong, and adopting our recommendation on green kitchen, and then helping them to reduce water and waste and energy. So they even use our initiative to get it implemented in the other stop. Obviously not in our premises, but it doesn't matter because we want the industry to share the success and story. So that's how we deal with our downstream lease asset in terms of office and also retail, hitting the most influential part and engaging them in a way, and forget about, for the time being, about the financial incentive. But later on, I can't guarantee, maybe a few years later, they will come back, reduce their consumption, what will be the impact? But at the moment, we are planning to install power tech, this type of energy meter, so that I can capture the precise consumption. At the moment, I got this iPad here. I can immediately access all my assets in Chinese mainland and Hong Kong, every single asset, both my landlord and tenants, and real-time online at this moment, what is the consumption? And also compared to the last 3 years, and seeing the trend, why this is happening, either flat out, reducing, and go. So along our way, we offer some digitization sort of strategy to our tenants and within ourselves, because we do believe digitization prepare ourselves as an enabler, plus high degree of electrification leading to sustainability, particular valid in Chinese mainland, because it is absolutely important in doing in this way.
Thank you very much. I think it's very inspiring to learn about like how you find a common incentive to inspire your suppliers or stakeholders along the value chain to work towards that goal. Over to Sebastian. So I think nowadays consumers are very aware of like being the environmental impact in the choice of their consumption, and AS Watson has so many suppliers in various jurisdictions. And how is your group engaged with those stakeholders along the chain over different jurisdictions? I think that must be a great challenge to your group. So what's your tips or advice?
Indeed, I mean, I mentioned the Scope 3 earlier. So Scope 3 is about 90% plus of our emission. And if you remember the chart on the screen earlier showing you the different elements of Scope 3, we have what we call hotspots, where a majority of the Scope 3 is coming. an area called purchase goods and services. So typically this is our manufacturers, how they make the product, the material they use to make the products, upstream transport and distribution. It's how they carry the goods from their factory to our warehouse, our stores, depending on the market. And the third one also is the use of products sold. I mean, you take a shower, you need to heat up the water, and you have to take a shower, you buy food, you cook, etc. So for us, the key stakeholders are definitely our suppliers, but also our customers. And there's a third one that we still basically engage quite frequently, is also other organizations in the market where we are that can help us basically develop guidelines and address some issues. If I start with the suppliers, we've been basically looking a lot at where we source our products, how we source them. And the Scope 3 targets we've taken is basically a way for us to introduce to our suppliers what's coming to the next year basically with them. We want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions also that come from them. We've got a large project. We're going to kick it off by the end of this year. We've identified about 200 suppliers that make up to 80% of the core emission we want to reduce. And we're going to bring them and onboard them first through education. Some suppliers, don't get me wrong, some suppliers are way advanced, even more advanced than we are. So for them it will be easy. The others, and there's a lot of that, today lack knowledge. So it's good that, for example, ESG Academy and others, similar institutions exist to give that knowledge. And we're going to collect from them what we call primary data. And the primary data is very important because in measuring Scope 3 emissions, you need to understand a bit more about what is that supplier doing. Are they using renewable energy? Do they use only recycled materials in their packaging, et cetera, et cetera. So that is a very big part of our work. Along that as well, in fact, we started back in 2020. We took a commitment with an organization of Ellen MacArthur Foundation called the New Plastic Economy. And I really encourage any companies out there who have packaging to take that commitment. They have a lot of very good tools to explain how to measure plastic waste. And we've been doing that with them. And it brings that conversation back internally. There's a very important stakeholders we need to engage, our colleagues. Nothing happens if we don't get colleagues on board. So it goes through advising how to get it done, giving suggestions, and it's about starting small at the beginning, just to show them it's feasible. And when they understand the benefit for it, you'll be surprised how quickly they are basically to say, well, we can do more even. On the customers are indeed, as you said, more and more looking for products that will give them a sense of having, I would call it a more sustainable lifestyle, basically. And it can be anything. It can be on food, non-food, how they go to work, etc. As a retailer, we've always had some assortment, I would say, and most retailers have an assortment of products. But sometimes customers don't know where they are. They don't know how to find them. And we basically identify that in different markets. So the availability and transparency, so sometimes it's not visually available, even if you go online and on the e-commerce platform. The other demand of customers as well, it has to be affordable. Price has been raised as one key reason why a lot of customers are not embracing a more sustainable lifestyle choice. So these are very important parameters for us to keep internally and to help us develop products that can fit both. And it's not easy every time, but slowly we're progressing and we're putting much more assortment out there. We're engaging our suppliers. So we launched a big campaign that started here in Asia with all the Watsons retail. A campaign where we first want to develop more of our own brand products that are more sustainable in terms of what ingredient they use, the packaging they're using. And we've brought on board all the biggest FMCG. We work with all the FMCG you can imagine, L'Oreal, Unilever, P&G. And all these companies have found that idea very, very good, and they are following up, and they are basically coming up with innovative products. And that's what we want. We know we need it, our customer want it, so we need to make sure that we have that offer for them as well.
I do think the key is collaboration across all levels, external, internal, as the key to the success of your company's targets. So over to Peter. I know that Airport Authority has the carbon reduction program for many years already, and there's a growing number of business partners making pledges to reduce airport-wide carbon intensity. So could you share with us any challenges you encountered during this process and how you overcome it?
Yeah, sure. I think actually we go through similar experience or process with Sebastian or Raymond in terms of engaging our business partner. In fact, I think we have we always adopt what we call the airport-wide approach, meaning that, for example, in terms of the in terms of staffing, we only have a couple of thousand staff working under the airport authority, but we have close to 80,000 working in the airports. In terms of carbon emission, for example, for those emissions on the ground, I think I try to avoid talking about emissions in the air, which is another big topic. But for those emissions on the ground, actually, airport authority only contribute around something like 40%, and then the other 60% from our business partner operation. So it's important to work with our business partner to reduce the carbon. So we actually start our first carbon audit across the airport since 2009. And we previously, I think in the past decade, we have 2 5-year targets with our business partner. But those are intensity targets. I think everyone in this area understands, I think intensity target meaning that actually we have a very growing traffic in the past. So we are kind of only able to manage to keep the absolute emission stable or slight reduction, but now we're talking about net zero. So that's why last year we had our net zero 2050 carbon target, which means we really go for net zero in a few decades down the line, which is very much challenging. And with this new target, we have 29 business partners signing up. And I think to do this, actually, it is not just signing up the pledge. Actually, we also try to offer some support to our business partner to make this a success or possible. So that's why actually we have what we call the business partner carbon support program. I try to give example about the 2 elements of this program. The first one is what we call the carbon capacity building program. We are working in partnership with BC, Business Environment Council, to arrange a 3-year tailor-made program, which is actually to give some training to our business partner with some free events in terms of native technology, how to do the carbon inventory, carbon management, etc. And I think this is very well received. So we are kind of running already running 4th event and coming to have another event in December. And I think that helped them to come up with the emission inventory and then project their emission in the coming years. Because apart from the ultimate target of 2050 net zero, we also asked them to come up with a mid-term target, which is 2035. 55% carbon reduction compared with the 2018 baseline. We see this is a very important step because I think a few decades down the line, people are more relaxed, kind of. But then with a midpoint target, which is, I think, slightly more than a decade away, I think people really need to think what can they do in the upcoming years to make this happen. And we also asked them, actually, we have required them to submit the carbon data on an annual basis. And we help them to see whether they are deviating from their projected trajectories and see if anything that can help support them. And separately, financially, we also set up what we call the Green Innovation and Technology Fund, 20 million for the initial 3 years, helping them to pilot carbon reduction technology in the airport environment. So if that's only to be a success, they need to share this with our other relevant business partner so that can help everyone. I think this is as I said, this is an important element to engage them and to make everyone. I think initially, I think people are. I think in the past, I can say most are more relaxed or a PR purpose kind of carbon reduction. But I think in the last couple of years, people are thinking seriously because I think climate change is right in front of you, and everyone can feel the climate change. So I think for the major corporation, there's no question. They always have some carbon target, but for those SME, I think they also feel the pressure to be action immediately. So and I think as a leader in this group, I think we try to facilitate and give every support that we can to make our carbon target a reality rather than just a wishes. Yeah.
Thank you. So we have some very good questions from our audience, which also follow-up questions from what our panelists just mentioned. In particular, like as Peter just mentioned, for the SMEs, they may have more difficulties and less experience and also some resources constraint in terms of the climate reporting as well as the reducing carbon emissions. So how would you engage or support the SME suppliers or customers along your value chain? How can you motivate them to support your company's sustainability goals? Anything from any of you? Raymond?
Well, earlier I talked about 2 category, GG category, that are so material to our operation. But because of our new aspiration to hopefully to achieve a net zero emission by 2050, I think it's really challenging. So, and also if we continue to adopt SBTi, the net zero standard, that means over 90% of our scope 3 emission will have to be taken on board. Previously, I mentioned that just 2 categories enough to get us across the initial line, which is around 70%, but now it's almost 95%. So therefore, we have to really get down into what Sebastian earlier, as particularly the actuary, it is the supply side, their sort of emission in a much wider sense, right? So as far as we're concerned, we're embarking on a journey to reviewing our over 300 suppliers, their environmental performance declaration or sort of carbon emission. So understanding exactly what you highlighted, the adoption of renewable energy, there's scope 1 and 2. So we are starting looking into that in a stage by stage, starting with initial 100 supplier and then move on to, we have roughly 2 years to address it, right? So that is our really daunting task, right? But having said that is, if we engage the consultant, be able to help us to look into that, I have to say, there could be a free ride in the industry that as long as those information are get available, then other SME or other can actually rely on that and immediately understand the implication. But I need to ask my friend a lot of this insight, right? So therefore, we need to look at these development. But SME could rely on a lot of work that slightly larger corporate did, because we won't be, like what I said, we share with what we learn along the process. We share the 575, the paper in the public domain. So a lot of my friends in developers actually take it and review it among themselves, right? So this is important. Not only you help your corporate look into what needs to be done and all this, but you need to share the information. So learn from each other. So I suspect SME could rely on a lot of opportunity upcoming to learn from one another. And as a corporate on this journey is slightly ahead, you need to be prepared to share your knowledge with the wider public.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, and thank you very much for that underline, because yes, I wanted to talk about sharing. It's about best practice sharing at the end of the day, basically. So any company, basically, who has developed its own best practice, it's important that you find a way to share it outside. So we've done a lot of work in different markets, like in Hong Kong with the 𝗙𝗵𝗲 and the EPD, working on the guideline of packaging for the retail industry. It's a way for us to basically show that, of course, there is a painful point, again, always in that process, but there are solutions out there. So it's not, we don't want our suppliers or all SMEs, because I'm talking about SMEs in general. We don't want them basically to feel stress and panic, saying there's no way for me to do it. No, there are ways, plenty of ways of doing it. Of course, you would never expect a SME to do as much as maybe a listed company, a large listed company in Hong Kong, but any small effort is going to help towards what we're trying to achieve, decarbonization. So we need to share, we need to encourage, we need to incentivize. In a lot of discussion I had previously around incentivization, there's a lot of work I think that the finance industry can do, basically, banks, loans, etc. These are the way basically where small companies will see an immediate benefit, having a better rate when they want to borrow money from a bank, because they've performed very well and they are going to invest even further into renewable energy, etc. So these are the areas where I think talking about sharing, talking about collaboration, there's a broader aspect to that as well.
Yeah, actually, I got similar experience, similar in the aviation industry, of course. Apart from those BP support program that we mentioned about, we try to do whatever as an operator that help the other smaller business partner. But on the other side, basically, I think this is a reality we are going to tell our business partner, because all the major organizations, they're going to After dealing with the Scope 1 and 2 emission, they are now dealing with the Scope 3 emission. By Scope 3 emission, that means they need to work with the value chain, the business partner associates. So they need also to demonstrate they are Scope 3 cautious. So in that sense, basically, they need to demonstrate they are reducing their Scope 3 emissions. So that's why I think apart from the support side, we also let them know the realistic situation. The major organization will come to you and ask you how you are performing in terms of reducing their Scope 3 emission. So that's the incentive. I think maybe a few years down the line, I think major organization like Raymond mentioned about, for example, embodied carbon possible provider, they will only look for those that can provide low carbon construction material, for example. And if you are not ready, then sorry, you are out of the market.
Thank you. So maybe one more question. So the decarbonization journey needs the collective efforts from within the organization, from the top to every single level of the company. And how do you ensure that these initiatives can be better delivered by your frontline staff? I think Sebastian has a lot to share on this.
So we talked about the very important stakeholders earlier, our employees, basically. In that journey, we are still learning, we are still developing tools to support all our staff, basically, to understand where we are going and why we are doing it. The story goes back a couple of years ago where we started, in fact, to provide that training, that knowledge to the top management. Why? Because initially we really wanted to have influencers, understanding, and when they set targets or KPIs within their market, they can drive that journey with embedding sustainability in the practices. But quickly we realized that we had to catch up as well with our staff to make sure that even a person in a store understands what is a greenhouse gas emission. And I tell you, sometimes it's still not very easy to explain even to some other colleagues in the office. But they need to know it, and it is at least to be available anytime they want. So our company has developed a lot of e-learning tools. So all our staffs have a mobile phone. There is an app where they can access a lot of training materials. And we started to develop a sustainability module as well, where we're going to put every year a bit more content and link that content to not just what we do as a company. We want also people to understand what's going on out there. We're not the only one doing it, so that's why we need to show that we can do it as well. And then it goes down to, let's say, a market like Hong Kong or Singapore, where that business unit will tell their employees, this is what we do here. So we want you to help us and support us. And the next step is, what can you do as an individual? Not just for the company, but what can you do at home with your friends? Just, so again, small efforts, small change, behavior change, help to understand basically what we all try to achieve.
So to wrap up this panel discussion, could I ask each of you kindly share with us one key takeaway that you want our audience to bring back home today? Maybe we start with Peter.
Okay, to me it's quite clear. I mean, collaboration is the key to success in terms of decarbonization. Well, I think the focus is particularly with Scope 3, really think hard and collaborate, because if you just trying to do it by yourself, hardly you can achieve it in addressing this. Collaboration again.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it will basically go back to awareness. I think without awareness, you're not going anywhere. Governance, you set the right structure. And then finally, I would say, don't be afraid to ask for help. There are a lot of companies, reputable companies, every market that can support those SMEs and show them the way. And then on their own, they can decide if they want to recruit people for themselves to do work on sustainability, or if they want to keep working with external support. But don't be afraid of asking. That's it.
Thank you. So I think my takeaway from this panel discussion, obviously, is that no matter you are as an individual or as a company or the regulators, the whole market needs to work together. Let's all learn and progress together towards a sustainable future. And we look forward to see you again in the next ESG Academy webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for that insightful discussion. We are now at the end of today's event. Once again, we would like to thank all our speakers and participants for joining this event. We hope today's discussion has inspired you to further extend the carbon emissions management to your value chains. We look forward to seeing you at the next ESG Academy. Thank you and have a good afternoon.